Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown. From 2014 to 2017, Ben Roethlisberger and Antonio Brown were untouchable. Brown led the NFL in receptions, receiving yards and touchdowns across that span. The only player in history to do it over a 4-year stretch. Roethlisberger fed him relentlessly, averaging more than 600 pass attempts a season, and Pittsburgh's offense ranked among the top 5 3 times in 4 years. Together, they were the most explosive quarterback-wide receiver duo of the decade. But behind the highlights, the cracks were already forming. On the sidelines, cameras caught Brown screaming at Roethlisberger and at coaches. On social media, he began airing frustrations about not getting the ball. Inside the locker room, teammates described a growing rift. Brown believed he wasn't respected, while Roethlisberger used his standing as the veteran quarterback to publicly call him out. By 2018, it exploded. Brown skipped practices, stormed out of meetings, and ripped Roethlisberger on Twitter. Even as he led the league with 15 touchdowns, his relationship with the team collapsed. The Steelers benched him for the season finale. Months later, he was gone, traded to the Raiders for pennies. The fallout was immediate. Pittsburgh's passing game collapsed. Brown never again reached the heights he had in Pittsburgh, bouncing from the Raiders to the Patriots to the Buccaneers in a spiral of chaos. Roethlisberger, without him, never returned to the same prolific form. The question remains, was this the fault of a quarterback who failed to lead, or a wide receiver who was destined to blow up no matter what? Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy. In 2011, Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy were on top of the football world. Rodgers won league MVP with 4,643 yards, 45 touchdowns, and just 6 interceptions. The Packers went 15-1, looking like an unstoppable machine. Rodgers' precision and McCarthy's playbook seemed like a perfect marriage, and Green Bay looked destined to dominate the decade. But perfection doesn't last forever. As the years went on, tension grew between quarterback and coach. Rodgers bristled at McCarthy's play calling it outdated, predictable, and stubbornly conservative. Teammates later revealed that Rodgers would openly change calls at the line just to defy his head coach. The Packers still won games, but the chemistry was broken. The frustration boiled over in the playoffs. Green Bay suffered shocking home losses in the postseason, including the 2014 NFC Championship collapse against Seattle. The roster stayed competitive, Rodgers stayed elite, but the disconnect with McCarthy only deepened. By 2018, it was undeniable. The Packers were 4-7-1. Rodgers looked disengaged, and the offense had no rhythm. On December 2, 2018, the Packers lost at home to the 3-9 Arizona Cardinals. Hours later, McCarthy was fired. After 13 seasons, 1 Super Bowl, and 9 playoff appearances, the Rodgers-McCarthy partnership was dead. The fallout left scars. Rodgers' reputation took a hit, with critics saying he was difficult to coach, quick to undermine authority, and unwilling to adapt. McCarthy's legacy became tied to wasted years. A coach who had one of the most talented quarterbacks ever, and only came away with 1 ring. Together, they reached the peak of the sport. But once their trust eroded, their bond turned toxic. And the question lingers, did Rodgers sabotage his coach? Or did McCarthy waste the prime years of his quarterback's greatness? Donovan McNabb and Terrell Owens. In 2004, the Philadelphia Eagles finally had it all. Donovan McNabb was a perennial Pro Bowl quarterback, already leading Philly to 3 straight NFC Championship appearances. What he lacked was a true superstar wideout. That changed when the Eagles traded for Terrell Owens. The chemistry was instant and electric. Owens caught 77 passes for 1,200 yards and 14 touchdowns that year, despite missing 2 games. McNabb threw for 31 touchdowns against just 8 interceptions, the best season of his career. Together, they carried Philadelphia to Super Bowl 39. Owens' performance in that game was legendary. Less than 2 months removed from a broken leg and torn ankle ligaments, he gutted through the pain and delivered 9 catches for 122 yards against the Patriots. It was one of the most heroic efforts in Super Bowl history. But the Eagles lost, 24-21, and instead of uniting the team, the cracks between McNabb and Owens split wide open. What began as small frustrations turned into all-out war. Owens publicly questioned McNabb's conditioning, mocking him for getting winded in the Super Bowl's final drive. McNabb, never one for confrontation, quietly seethed while the locker room began to fracture. Owens demanded a new contract, skipped practices, and aired grievances on national TV. By 2005, the relationship was toxic. Sideline arguments spilled into the media. Owens was suspended mid-season and ultimately cut after just 2 years in Philadelphia. McNabb kept playing, but the window had closed. The Eagles, who looked ready to become a dynasty, never reached another Super Bowl in that era. The fallout was brutal for both. Owens bounced to Dallas and Cincinnati, putting up numbers but leaving chaos in his wake. McNabb never regained his peak form, his prime fading quickly without his star receiver. It was a duo that should have ruled the NFC for years. Instead, ego, pride, and mistrust turned them from unstoppable partners into bitter rivals. And the question will always hang over Philadelphia. Was McNabb's ego too fragile, or was Terrell Owens simply uncoachable? Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. For 2 decades, Tom Brady and Bill Belichick were inseparable. Together, they built the greatest dynasty the NFL has ever seen. 6 Super Bowl championships, 9 conference titles, and 17 division crowns. No quarterback-coach duo has ever matched their dominance. Belichick was the mastermind. Brady was the executioner. For years, it looked unbreakable. But behind the rings and the banners, cracks were forming. Brady wanted longevity. He wanted input on the roster. He wanted to be treated like more than just another player in Belichick's system. Belichick refused to bend. He pushed Brady the same way he pushed rookies and backups, dismissing his requests for contract extensions and influence. The Patriots' decision to draft Jimmy Garoppolo in 2014 only added fuel. Brady saw it as Belichick preparing to move on. Belichick saw it as business as usual. The tension simmered even as they kept winning. Super Bowl 52, a shocking loss to the Eagles, was punctuated by Belichick's infamous benching of Malcolm Butler, a decision that infuriated players and reportedly fractured the locker room. By 2019, Brady's frustration had reached a breaking point. When his contract expired, Brady didn't re-sign. He left New England after 20 years and joined the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. In his first season away from Belichick, he threw for over 4,600 yards and 40 touchdowns and won his 7th Super Bowl. The same year, Belichick and the Patriots limped to a 7-9 record, missing the playoffs for the first time in 12 years. The fallout was seismic. For Brady, it was proof he wasn't just a system quarterback. He was the system. For Belichick, it was a reminder that even the greatest coach in NFL history couldn't win without his quarterback. Together, they built a dynasty that will never be matched. But pride, ego, and stubbornness turned the NFL's ultimate partnership into a cold divorce. And the question still divides fans. Did Brady walk away because Belichick refused to change? Or did Belichick let the greatest quarterback of all time slip through his hands? Brett Favre and the Packers front office. In the mid-1990s, Brett Favre was the face of football. 3 straight MVP awards, a Super Bowl victory in 1996, another appearance in 1997. Favre and the Green Bay Packers looked like they could dominate forever. He was the gunslinger, the Iron Man, the quarterback who never missed a start. But behind the legend, frustration was building. Favre's yearly waffling on retirement drove the Packers front office insane. Every offseason, the same question lingered. Was Favre in or out? Teammates and coaches never knew if he'd commit fully. By 2005, Green Bay made their move. They drafted Aaron Rodgers in the first round. The heir apparent, a ticking clock on Favre's future. The relationship fractured. Favre resented the pick. The front office grew tired of waiting on his indecision. The tension exploded in 2008. Favre announced his retirement in March. The Packers moved forward with Rodgers, but a few months later, Favre changed his mind. He wanted back in. The front office refused. After 16 seasons in Green Bay, Favre was traded to the New York Jets. The fallout was ugly. Favre's Jet stint fizzled in 1 year. Then came the ultimate betrayal. He joined the Minnesota Vikings, the Packers' most hated rival. In 2009, Favre torched Green Bay twice, throwing 7 touchdowns and 0 interceptions against his old team. He led the Vikings to the NFC Championship, coming 1 play away from a Super Bowl. For Packers fans, it was a nightmare. Watching their icon in purple, celebrating on their pain. Eventually, the wounds healed. Favre's number was retired, his name added to Lambeau Field's Ring of Honor. But for years, the breakup poisoned the franchise. The truth is messy. Did Favre betray the Packers by refusing to let go? Or did the Packers push out a legend too soon? Either way, the bromance between quarterback and franchise turned toxic, leaving scars that took a decade to fade. Russell Wilson and the Seahawks locker room. In 2013 and 2014, the Seattle Seahawks were everything an NFL dynasty was supposed to be. The Legion of Boom ruled the defense. Marshawn Lynch powered the run game. and a young Russell Wilson gave them the quarterback they needed to bring it all together. In just his second year, Wilson led Seattle to a Super Bowl title. The very next season, they were back on the biggest stage, 1 yard away from a second straight championship. That's when everything broke. Down 28-24 to New England in Super Bowl 49. With 26 seconds left, Seattle had the ball on the Patriots' 1 yard line. Everyone expected Marshawn Lynch to get the handoff. Instead, Pete Carroll called a slant. Wilson's pass was intercepted by Malcolm Butler. The Seahawks lost. The locker room never recovered. Defensive leaders like Richard Sherman and Cam Chancellor believed the coaching staff had chosen Wilson over the team. That play call became the symbol of a growing divide. Wilson was the protected star, while the defense felt disrespected. Players whispered that Wilson was untouchable, that the organization gave him privileges others didn't get. The tension boiled over in practices and meetings. Sherman openly screamed at coaches. Michael Bennett took shots at Wilson through the media. Marshawn Lynch quietly walked away from the game. What should have been a dynasty split into factions. One side built around the defense, the other built around Wilson. The fallout was a dynasty cut short. Seattle never returned to the Super Bowl with Wilson. The Legion of Boom disbanded. Wilson kept putting up numbers, but the team became one and done in the playoffs. By 2022, the Seahawks traded him to Denver, officially ending the era. Russell Wilson and the Seahawks built one of the most feared teams of the decade. But inside, resentment turned the locker room toxic. And the question lingers, was Wilson the cause of the fracture, or did Seattle's defense implode under the weight of its own pride? Jay Cutler and Brandon Marshall. In 2008, Jay Cutler and Brandon Marshall looked like the next big thing in Denver. Cutler made the Pro Bowl with over 4,500 passing yards, and Marshall hauled in 104 receptions for 1,265 yards. The quarterback with the rocket arm had his perfect complement in the physical, dynamic receiver. Together, they were unstoppable, or so it seemed. But under the surface, the relationship was volatile. Marshall's fiery personality clashed with coaches, and Cutler's aloof, often dismissive leadership rubbed teammates the wrong way. After just 3 seasons together, the Broncos blew it up. Cutler was traded to Chicago in 2009, and Marshall followed a year later, first to Miami, then eventually reuniting with Cutler in Chicago in 2012. At first, it looked like a revival. Their connection reignited. In 2012, Marshall caught 118 passes for 1,508 yards and 11 touchdowns, the best season of his career. Cutler finally had his trusted weapon again, and the Bears' offense looked dangerous. But the old problems resurfaced. Marshall criticized Cutler publicly for his lack of preparation and leadership. Cutler bristled at Marshall's intensity and outspokenness. What once looked like chemistry turned into constant conflict. The sideline blow-ups mounted. Locker room tension spilled into the media. The fallout was inevitable. By 2015, Marshall was gone, traded away after just 3 seasons in Chicago. Cutler played 2 more years before retiring, never fulfilling his immense potential. Together, they had the talent to dominate for a decade. But personality clashes turned their bromance toxic. And the truth is, the duo was defined less by what they achieved, and more by what they never became. Robert Griffin III and Washington's coaching staff. In 2012, Robert Griffin III was the NFL's new superstar. Washington traded a fortune, 3 first-round picks and a second, to move up and draft him second overall. The gamble paid off immediately. Griffin exploded onto the scene, winning Offensive Rookie of the Year with 3,200 passing yards, 815 rushing yards, and 27 total touchdowns. His dual threat ability made him nearly unstoppable, and Washington won the NFC East. Fans believed they had finally found their franchise quarterback, but greatness came with a price. Late in the season, Griffin sprained his LCL against the Ravens. Instead of resting him, head coach Mike Shanahan pushed him back into action. In the wild card round against Seattle, disaster struck. Griffin re-injured the knee, collapsing on a torn ACL and LCL. The sight of their franchise star writhing on the ground became the turning point of his career. Griffin came back in 2013, but he was never the same. The explosive burst was gone. He clashed with coaches over scheme, insisting on running a pass-heavy system, while Shanahan's staff wanted him to protect himself with shorter reads. Their relationship soured fast, with anonymous leaks painting Griffin as entitled and uncoachable. By 2014, he was benched. By 2016, he was gone from Washington altogether. The fallout was catastrophic. Washington had mortgaged its future to draft Griffin, and in return, got one magical season followed by collapse. The franchise wasted years recovering from the failed experiment, while fans were left wondering how much of the blame fell on Griffin and how much on a coaching staff that refused to protect its star. Griffin's story wasn't just about injury. It was about mistrust, ego, and mismanagement. A quarterback and a coaching staff that started as a perfect match, only to become adversaries. For Washington, it was supposed to be the beginning of a dynasty. Instead, it became another scar in a franchise defined by dysfunction. And for Robert Griffin III, the question still lingers. Was he ruined by his own refusal to adapt? Or was his career destroyed by a team that never learned how to protect him? If you want more stories of NFL greatness and collapse, hit subscribe, drop a like, and stick around. The next chapter of football history is already waiting.